What's your name?
Tamika Chance.
Hi, Tamika Chance.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good.
What is your faith?
I'm a Seventh day Adventist.
How would you explain the Seventh-day Adventist denomination to someone who has never heard of it before?
Well, in a nutshell, Seventh day Adventists are people who observe the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, as in creation in Genesis, where God blessed and hallowed the Sabbath. So we kept that and we believed in that. Also, Advent has to do with we believe in the second coming of Christ.
Okay. Were you born into a Seventh-day Adventist family?
Um, how do I answer this? Yes and no. Initially, I never knew this, but I wasn't born in a Seventh day Adventist family per se. I later found out that my mom's dad was a Seventh day Adventist and that they were exposed to that faith, but upon the separation of her parents, she went to live with her mom, and so she was no longer practicing that faith.
When did you first learn about the Seventh-day Adventist faith?
I first learned about the Seventh Day Adventist faith, I believe, through learning in school, and I've met friends in high school that were Seventh Day Adventists, but I didn't know much about them. I just, in general, will just hear that a Seventh Day Adventist is someone who didn't eat pork.
What was your faith before your current one?
Before I became a Seventh Day Adventist, I grew up in a Baptist church. So we go to church, or we went to church on Sunday, and yeah, that was basically it.
What persuaded you to continue to attend this church?
My love for Jesus, and I was convicted through studies and through interactions with other brethren that this is the true church. It aligns with the biblical principles, and for that matter, with Jesus being the main reason why I'm still in the church.
When did you become serious about your religion?
I became serious about my religion 10 years ago. 10 years ago.
Did moving to a new country affect your religion in any way?
No, and yes. Moving to a new country did not affect my religion, but in in fact it pushes my religion is Christianity, right? Yeah. So yes and no. Moving to a new country did not affect my religion. I'm still a Christian, but it has pushed me further to want to get closer to Christ.
What has been your biggest influence for staying in the Seventh-day Adventist Church?
Jesus, the Sabbath, and just the principles upon which the church operates, or the pillars.
Was there any key person in your life that drew you towards this religion?
Yes, it's so interesting, and I'm actually smiling when it comes to this because when I look at how my life progressed over a time, I mean, I couldn't see it in advance, but as I journey along through this life that God has picked out for me, I see the hand of God directed me to the church. One, it was my aunt who I visited when I was age 17 years old. She's a Seventh day Adventist. Though I've heard of Seventh day Adventists, I didn't really know what they were about, what their practices were. But that weekend with her was really enlightening. I remember going to church with her and the way the entire program was set up and the things they would talk about. For instance, I remember that for me, like the newcomers were placed in a group, and the regulars were on another side, and they basically go through and introduce us to the church, what their beliefs and practice were. And I just, at that time, I felt like it was the best experience I've ever had in my life since going to any church at all. Another thing is that the way my aunt lived, when it came to Friday, which is called the preparation day, she got everything done. She came home from work early. She got everything done. She cooked, she cleaned, she ironed, make sure everything was done before the sunset. Once the sunset came, there was nothing worldly that was being done in our home. The TV was on a Christian um, channel. Just the whole setting of the house and everything was just different. You could tell that it is a time of reverence and worship. So that stuck in my mind. Then forward several years after, I became a police officer and I was at work and I met this young man. Oh, my aunt, by the way, is Maureen Bennett, my great love. And then I met this young man, Joseph Edwards, and I spoke to him about my faith, and I found out that he was a Seventh-day Adventist also, and I was like, oh wow, you know. And he said to me, would you like to study? And sure, I said yes to him. So I went to his office, and the first book that he introduced to me, and my first book actually, that is written by someone of the Seventh-day Adventist church that I've read or seen, was Step to Christ. And I remember him taking me through the steps. We didn't have much Bible studies after that, but that really stayed with me for a long time. Then fast forward some more. I migrated to the United States, and I was introduced to my cousins who I never even knew existed. I don't even think my dad really knew them, and we didn't know that they were in America, you know. And when I finally got connected to my cousins, which is Judy and her two kids, Sheldon and Serena, they happen to be Seventh-day Adventists too. So I'm like, okay, it seems as if I'm on a path here. So I was very excited because I was at a point now where I was looking back over my life and I wanted to understand God's purpose and where He's directed me, and just having Him bring people in my life, which I ask for people that will influence me to draw close to Him, to want to do good in my life and all of that. And here comes not one, not two, but three families that I never knew about, and they're Christians and they're Seventh-day Adventists. So of course, when they invited us to church, we did go. And since I got there, we have never left. We've never left. We gradually became baptized, and we stayed members of the South Bronx. Then we stop this and go back. The South Bronx SDA for a very long time.
When did you get baptized and why did you decide to do it?
So I decided to get baptized after I felt like I could not resist anymore. I would often describe it as I felt God's love, I realized God's love, and I felt like if I did not give my life to Him, I was going to die. That's how, what's the word, intense it was for me.
What do you hope to pass on to your children that you have learned from the church?
What do I hope to pass on? I'm sure that my kids, by the time they would have gotten to adulthood, would have experienced the same thing that I've experienced, because I am taking them through the process. They will go to church, they will learn about God. And my daughter, of course, Aaliyah, she's 18, so I've learned enough. So there's not much that I hope to leave in terms of, you know, why they're in the church, because they're being exposed to the doctrine and everything. But on a personal level, I want them to basically to realize, if nothing else, that Christ is important, and that they should never ever allow themselves to be drawn away from Him for any reason at all, but they would stay grounded in the church and as much as possible try to serve Him.
Do you have any regrets during this journey?
Yes, I do. I wish I had listened to the prompting of God earlier and joined when I was way younger, because it's when you're inside that you realize how much you have missed. And I with all my heart, I wish I was a Seventh-day Adventist much longer. But hey, 10 years, that's a milestone, so I'm thankful.
What do you hope for people to take away from this video?
Takeaway. Let's see. God is still in charge. God is important, and it doesn't matter how the world try to minimize him. He will never and can never be minimized. So the best thing you can do for yourself is to draw closer to him, him, get to know Christ. And while the journey will not be perfect, you'll have rough patches. Of course, you might stumble a few times, but you can be assured from my experience that he will never leave you, will never forsake you. He will always be with you, and whatever you do, once you have a very repentant heart, he will forgive you. So the best thing you can do for yourself and your family is to stay close to God.
Thank you.